interpretation of this is the decision's been made before you thought you made it.
I totally remember this. This is so great. Talk a little bit more about this, because I think we need to really hear this.
Yes, we don't know who's making the decisions because it seems like you've made a commitment to your interpretation of reality before you even know you're making it. A lot of research in physiology, brain physiology, has shown that the way you respond to certain things depends on the emotional content, which means before you're even aware of your interpretation of something, something in your subconscious has made a commitment one way or another. I think Deepak Chopra called it a premature cognitive commitment. That was his term for it, right? But it's this idea that you subconsciously make choices, but if it's happening subconscious, who's doing it? Because you're not consciously sitting there. You think you go on into the supermarket, you choose between different types of cereal. You know, you think you're making a choice. But this research seems to indicate you already made the choice. And you're rationalizing the decision rather than actually making a choice. This turns all that rational choice theory on its head, by the way. Okay, to get deeper into your question, if we're not making decisions the way we are making it, what are we doing? We're certainly making decisions at a subconscious level, and since it still originates from you're responsible. But more importantly, I think what we choose to dwell on at every moment is our responsibility.
I agree with you.
We do seem to have the ability to shift what we're focusing on. And in that sense, you can change. I think the research shows that if you hold on to a thought for 15 seconds or longer, it begins to have a physiological impact on you in the way that the dendrites are structured in your nervous system. You begin to grow dendrites around your thoughts. Every thought has a physical
manifestation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in your body. So we are responsible for what we choose to dwell on.
Yes.
And so in a sense, I think we do have free will, but I can't prove that ultimately. It's just my experience of it. I don't think any of us ultimately can, but I think we do, because we do have a choice of our focus from moment to moment.
That's where I think the free will is. But I'm just wondering if the total sense of free will is inflated and that a great part of it is an illusion. We have a part like what you're talking about what we focus on. Let me give you an interesting example of this. I just got an email for someone this morning that heard a show that I did on extraterrestrial civilizations. And the particular guest had mentioned something politically that was very accusatory to the country of Israel and the United States. And when we got to that part of the interview, as the person who's having the dialogue with the guest, I chose with consciousness not to engage in a battle or a fight or a retort about that comment, because that was not the focus of the show. I did not agree with the statement that was made. So somebody had listened to the show that heard about it from Facebook, and I must have read an entire page of litany about how I was doing soft journalism. It was a very perceptive comment the guy made, that my silence in not dealing with that comment was basically giving license to it, and all this other stuff. And I said, look, at the end of the day, my guests are my guests. I'm not there to attack them for the way they think or what they feel. There will be some things I will respond to, but I'm here to move the conversation and to expand the public mind and consciousness of what's going on. And so just because a guest says something that I don't politically agree with doesn't mean I'm going to then get into a political discussion with them. It's interesting. You never know how things are being responded to by people, but it took great restraint for me not to respond to the statement that my guest made. But I did it with consciousness to keep the energy moving, because I had to make a higher choice to expand the public thought and work with him on the show to do that, or to get into a battle over something that the show wasn't about. It's interesting, though, as a producer and host, that I got the response I did. But I'm bringing this home to say to you that that choice was made during the interview. And with consciousness, even though I personally didn't like it, didn't like what was said, didn't agree with it, etc. And that's where free will comes into being. I exercise my free will not to get into a tangle which doesn't mean that I resist conflict. I just didn't see it as carrying what the show was about forward. That's free will. Now, I told the gentleman who made the comment, feel free to make the comment on the broadcast blog. And if you would like to have me have that guest back and you'd like to be one of the callers to ask him questions or to get into a response to that, that can be a separate segment. No problem. Do you see what I'm saying? And I don't have to accept that it's soft journalism because I didn't get into a fight with my guest. But that's free will. Maybe another host would get into it and try through ratings to get into a conflict. I think that's inappropriate. It's not about whether I personally agree with what they're saying, but they need to reveal what they think, what they feel, what their experience, what their expertise is, etc. You know, I did also a show with George Gilder on the Israel test. So I've had both good and bad things said about Israel, about Jewish people, about this and that, and I don't take on everything that people say politically. I just don't go there because that's not what my show's about. But I wanted to share that with you, that that's an example of free will in action.
Yeah, I think you made a choice. You made a choice to have a type of show that can cover a lot of types of topics without making judgment. Because people are used to this type of journalism now that is kind of like gutter journalism, where it just turns into like a food fight. We all see this. We know channels on TV that are like this now. It's very narrow. And people, look, honestly, people like that in some ways, that type of argumentative, type of attacking type of journalism, because it's like a gladiator duel. You know, someone's going to get injured. It's like, where's the blood, right?
Well, there's a lot of things that I don't have to agree with people's views. The thing was also the conscious choice of my free will to be a player in moving the subject of the interview, the main body of subject, opening it up for the public mind. That was my choice versus getting into my personal issue with what the guest said.
You made a choice, and you made a choice to have a show that can stay open rather than to go to a lower level where it's all just about attacking. And people have gotten used to that now because of the type of cable channels we have, but it doesn't often help because it just becomes a very narrow argument. And so if you've made a choice not to have that, it makes your show more expansive and more open to new possibilities.
But it doesn't necessarily fit if you're very tuned in to the frequency of political dialogue, fighting, conflict, attacking different views, etc. It's more in the dwelling place where you dwell. And I have people on that have said statements, even people I have huge respect for, etc., that I really think some of the things they have said in the body of their higher contribution didn't enhance the expandability of their main contribution, that were off-putting or that didn't apply. It's not for me to say. If they call me as a media coach, I'll assist them. But it's not for me to be doing that in the interview. But I want to go back to your book as we close, and hopefully you will come back and be a guest again. I've really enjoyed this. I want to go back to Opening Minds as you subtitled it, A Journey of Extraordinary Encounters, Crop Circles, and Resonance. I would like, in the last few minutes, if you can, and this subject deserves a whole other hour and a half, really, what is a crop circle? Give us the frame of reference, then share with us what are the distortions or the multiple things about this subject that we need to know about that moved you to write about it. So what is a crop circle?
Well, it's obviously a whole nother show, Kim. But
yeah, just to give them some food for thought, and then we'll have you back.
It's these patterns that appear in grain crops for the last 100 years or more in a lot of different countries. Some of them are made by UFOs. Some of them are made by balls of light. A lot of them are now made by people. They all seem to have very strange effects on cameras and batteries and attract a lot of weirdness around them. I can say this from firsthand knowledge. I've seen it happen so many times myself. Even in circles that we've made experimentally. I know this is a kind of a taboo subject for some people in the crop circle. We've made some to see what it's like, and we've gotten the weird effects in our cameras and equipment in the ones we've made, which means they're all real. All of them from different sources of origin. And so what we seem to have created is a type of advanced technology out in the field. It's possible, I mean, my interpretation is that the UFO and occupants have been attempting to show us something, and that the whole goal was to get people to experiment with it, to play with it. But, you know, the reason why it works goes back to what we were talking about, chaos theory a little bit. It's like a coherent distortion in the field of perfectly planted wheat, you know, planted very evenly, regularly. And then you have this geometric pattern. It's like a distortion in this very regular distribution of wheat or whatever grain crop it is. seems to create very interesting electronic and other